All right. What's up, everybody? Hope you guys have had a good day. We are going to start with some clips of people commenting on the prorogation, Trudeau's resignation. MP Scheer just spoke a couple hours ago. If you guys didn't catch that, we'll watch that. We've got some funny stuff happening with Trump and Trudeau. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Make sure the volume's okay here.
Well, good morning. Today, the Public Accounts Committee was supposed to meet to start the consideration of a non-confidence motion in this Liberal government. Rather than allow that to happen, Justin Trudeau has selfishly shut down Parliament to avoid accountability. That non-confidence motion was being moved because after 9 years of Trudeau's government and this Liberal Party running the country, Canadians have been suffering through so much misery. Families going to food banks for the first time in their lives, families with two incomes, sometimes having to go to food banks to supplement their groceries. People turning down thermostats as the Liberal carbon tax has driven up home heating and utilities. Homeless encampments in tent cities popping up all across the country. 1,400 tent encampments in Ontario alone. Violent crime rising by 50% since the Liberals took office. All of this has caused so much suffering and hardship, and Justin Trudeau kept desperately clinging to power, even as more and more of his own MPs expressed non-confidence in his government. And rather than do what was right and allow the Canadian people to have their say in a carbon tax election, Justin Trudeau has run and hid from accountability and cowardly announced his resignation rather than give Canadians the choice, putting this off till sometime in March. All this at a time of great uncertainty that Canadians are facing. We've got an incoming administration in the United States threatening our country with tariffs. We've got very poor economic news in the past few weeks. Our dollar has been sliding. And as I said, 6 consecutive quarters of per capita GDP declines. All so that the Liberal Party can sort out its internal mess. Once again, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have proven that they put themselves ahead of the Canadian people. Nothing will change with a Liberal leadership race. I mean, if we look through some of the candidates that are being speculated about and some who have even indicated that they will likely run, let's look at Mark Carbon Tax Carney, as he's known in political circles. He holds the position, he is currently Justin Trudeau's chair of his economic task force. He is one of the main architects of Trudeau's record. He loves the carbon tax so much that he was even fighting against any exemptions being given to Canadians struggling with home heating costs. He supports all of Justin Trudeau's policies. He was one of the key architects of this Liberal administration. Chrystia Freeland was there all along the way, applauding and cheering and voting in favor all of Justin Trudeau's policies that doubled housing costs, that drove up inflation and interest rates, that let dangerous and repeat offenders out on the streets, prioritizing the rights of criminals ahead of the rights of law-abiding Canadians. And she was even prepared to blow through her already insane $40 billion deficit guardrail right up until the moment that she was told that she would be demoted right afterwards. All of these speculated Liberal candidates will just be more of the same. Even Christy Clark, who is Premier of British Columbia, who increased the carbon tax by 200%. Canadians don't need this uncertainty and chaos as Liberal leadership contenders try to compete to show Liberal members who loves the carbon tax the most, who wants to run even bigger deficits, and who wants to plunge our country into even more misery. Canadians need a carbon tax election so we can put an end to all the misery and suffering and all the chaos that Justin Trudeau has selfishly put our country in. To consider the fact that Canadians don't even know when the new Prime Minister will be chosen or what process. This is all to be sorted out when we're just less than 2 weeks away from an incoming U.S. administration with these tariffs threatening our country. This was an incredibly selfish and self-centered move, once again proving that Liberals put themselves and their party ahead of the interests of Canada and of Canadians. And all of this could have been avoided, by the way, if Jagmeet Singh had have actually put his actions where his words were. Remember in September, he had that very theatrical display where he pretended to rip up the agreement with the Liberals, came right back into that House of Commons and voted time and time again, 8 times, voted confidence in propping up Justin Trudeau, even as more and more MPs, not just in opposition parties, but even in the Prime Minister's own party, had expressed their non-confidence. So that's why Conservatives are once again calling for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party to please, for the sake of Canadians' well-being, for the sake of those struggling families going through so much hardship. I mean, think of 1,400 tent encampments in Ontario. Life wasn't like this in Canada before the Liberals took office, and it won't be like this in Canada after Canadians vote them out. It's not too late. They can still do the right thing. They can call a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote for a new government, for strength and stability to weather our country through these challenging times. I'll be happy to answer a few questions. I'll just allow my colleague to say a few words in French. Thank you.
Okay, let's skip the French part.
Bonjour. Je suis aussi aujourd'hui, c'est parce que je devais...
I do like Mr. Bothrold. He does speak English, actually, but, you know, he's from Quebec, so they speak French first. Let's see what the reporters have to say.
Will Mr. Trudeau's resignation affect the Conservatives' election strategy?
It's clear that the country has had enough of Liberal policies. Nothing has really changed in terms of what the Liberal Party will be offering Canadians. We're about to have a leadership race where all the candidates have either voted for or been the chief architects of Justin Trudeau's terrible policies that have inflicted so much misery. So we're going to continue to highlight that, regardless of who the Liberal leader happens to be. Canadians didn't get tired of looking at Justin Trudeau's face. It's not like they got sick of his voice. They're suffering under his policies. The reason why so many Canadians are so angry at this government is because of the misery that Canadians are experiencing. They're the ones that are having to put that roast of beef back on the grocery store shelf. They're the ones who are moving out of their homes into their cars and into tent cities. It has nothing to do with the personality of the man. It has everything to do with the policies that have been inflicted upon Canadians, and every single Liberal contender for that leadership race has been a vocal cheerleader of Justin Trudeau and his policies. And we are going to remind Canadians of that terrible legacy, no matter when the election is and no matter who happens to be leading the party.
On the leadership race, as we know, there have been concerns about foreign interference in past Liberal nomination campaigns and others because of the party's membership rules. What is your assessment of that? And do you have concerns about it going into a leadership race? Do you think the party ought to change the rules?
Well, we've had major concerns with how Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have handled foreign interference. They've dragged their feet. They've resisted accountability. They still refuse to release the names of members of Parliament that were listed in the Security and Intelligence report. Justin Trudeau has never taken this threat seriously. He has sat on reports and recommendations and done absolutely nothing about it. So we are concerned, but we believe the best way to deal with all kinds of threats to Canada, including foreign interference, is to have a new Conservative government that will take these things seriously. Let's let Canadians decide. Let's let Canadians vote in a carbon tax election so we can close the chapter on this terrible Liberal legacy of 9 years of misery inflicted upon Canadians and finally start a new chapter.
On the tariffs with the U.S., you speak of strength that Canada needs. So what is your colleague, Jamil Jaravani, best friends with J.D. Vance, doing to advance Canada's cause to get a carve-out?
You're right to point out that when a country has a position of strength, it's able to negotiate much better. And it's clear that Justin Trudeau has been personally very weak in dealing with the U.S. administration of both parties, by the way.
I'm asking about your colleague.
Of both parties. Justin Trudeau had to capitulate to Donald Trump the first time he was president. He then backed down to President Biden, failed to get an exemption on softwood lumber or Buy America, failed to get new energy exports to the United States. So Justin Trudeau has been incredibly weak personally, and he has put our country in a position of weakness by imposing a carbon tax on Canada when the United States doesn't have one, chasing away jobs and investment. There are fewer voices in the U.S. fighting to maintain access to Canadians' markets. So our entire party, our entire caucus is focused on making Canada stronger, bringing in economic measures that will grow our economy, make more investors around the world fighting to get into Canada instead of fighting to pull out of Canada and invest in other countries.
On foreign interference and the rules about the race that my colleague was asking about, you say the Prime Minister and his party have not released the names, but your leader has not looked at the report unredacted to see the names, potentially names that concern him, and
Holy
take action.
security
So
clearance.
now that we are going into an election clearly in the spring, what's your party doing for foreign interference to make sure that there isn't any in your party and in nominations?
Well, we all know why Justin Trudeau wanted to silence our leader. He wanted to put our leader, Pierre Poilievre, in a position where he could know information but do nothing about it. Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister today. He has the power to release those names. He has the authority. No.
Of nominations, of signing nomination papers. So what's your party doing? Let's move
it's
away
very
from the
clear.
report.
It's very
what's
clear.
Your party doing
you
on
asked
foreign
a question
interference?
about the report,
Well,
so
your party not my question. So
I'm
what are
trying
you
to
doing
answer you
about
the
foreign
question that you
interference?
actually asked, even though you might not like the answer I'm giving. Justin Trudeau has had years to respond to the threats that have been reported to him through CSIS, through our National Security Agency. He refused to do it. It took brave whistleblowers to raise the alarm, and only then did this Liberal government do anything about it. Well, I'll let party officials answer questions of that nature, but there's no question that had we had an election in the fall, we could be in a position of strength. We could be tackling all these issues. We could have a much stronger economy. We could have a stronger administration with a clear mandate from the Canadian people. Limping along for the next few weeks because Justin Trudeau backed down from a fight, because Justin Trudeau recognized that he had lost the confidence of the House, of Parliament, but refused to let the Canadian people decide an election. I mean, that's essentially what he's done. He's essentially, by proroguing and shutting down the Public Accounts Committee, he's effectively moved the inevitable date where he will face a non-confidence vote from the end of January to the end of March.
Yep.
Those are 2 extra months of uncertainty and chaos and misery that Canadians will have to live through, and it's put our country in an incredibly dangerous position when dealing with the United States.
That's nearly 3 months.
You said when Liberal ministers are going to be distracted by their own leadership race when it comes to the tariff threat from the U.S. In the meantime, Canadians are wondering what the Conservatives can do in the meantime to protect Canadian interests from the opposition benches before we head to an election.
Well, he's eliminated the functions of Parliament. He's shut down Parliament. He's put a close sign on the chamber, and he's shut down the committees that were going to do exactly what you're saying, litigating his record and coming up with recommendations on how to undo the damage of the Liberal government for the past 9 years. Instead of doing that, he shut down. And you are right, and our leader is right. Now we've got cabinet ministers who are supposed to be preparing for the incoming U.S. administration, supposed to be dealing with the economic challenges that they themselves have caused. They've been pretending to say they're going to be coming up with all kinds of economic plans, and rather than doing that, they're going to be calling backroom insiders and well-connected senior Liberals to raise money and build power coalitions within a political party. They put their internal party intrigue ahead of the best interests of Canadians. Shameful, and the best way to fix it is to call a carbon tax election so that Canadians can decide. Thank you.
Man, reporters got to let him answer the question. And I actually really liked that point from one of the reporters asking about the leadership race with foreign interference, and I think that's a really good point. I think we should be worried about the Liberal leadership race and foreign interference. So here's one thing from yesterday. I know Mark Miller talked with Vashi, and he's always off the rails, but this is funny to watch.
The last time we spoke in this very location, or actually I think you were actually remote, was just a few days after Chrystia Freeland quit. At the time, you were really sure that the Prime Minister should remain on as Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party. Do you think he ultimately did the right thing today?
Yeah, I think, if you're a fan of Justin Trudeau, and there are a lot of them in this country,
no, there's not.
It's a sad day. But the decision that he took over the course of the last couple weeks is the right one for Canada and the right one for the nation. And I think that's where we are today. I've spent a lot of time with him speaking about his future over the
hold on. Before we watch this, I know a lot of people are talking about the Trump thing. So I want to, where's that clip that I have? So this happened just a few hours ago as well. Let's watch this first. We'll get back to Mark Miller in a sec. This is a reporter asking Trump about Canada being the 51st state.
If we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstance will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't.
Points, you had suggested.
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir Lopez, you said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force.
Okay, so just the question there, if you couldn't really hear the reporter, was about the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and how he has basically said that he wouldn't want Canada to become a 51st state. So Trump was saying there that, oh, well, maybe he will, maybe he won't win. We don't know yet. We have to wait for an election in Canada, I guess, to kind of see what happens. And then the reporter asks about military force. He says, well, can you just take it by military force? And Trump's answer is no.
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you, if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. We help them. As an example, we're buying icebreakers, and Canada wants to join us in the buying of icebreakers. I said, we don't really want to have a partner in the buying of icebreakers. We don't need a partner. But no right. Nope, no right. Here's what we have. We have a right not to help them with their financial difficulties because we owe $36 trillion too. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast, but we're going to be able to do it because of energy and other things. But no right. No right. But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their 20% of our car market. They send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything, and we don't need any of it. So I said to him, well, why are we doing it? He said, I don't really know. He was unable to answer the question, but I can answer it. We're doing it because of habit, and we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors, but we can't do it forever, and it's a tremendous amount of money. And why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either. European Union, we have a trade deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm product. They don't take anything. And so we're not going to have it with them either. Brian, go ahead.
Okay, so he's got a good point there, talking in comparison with the EU. I agree with his point on the EU. I slightly disagree with his point on the Canada trade deficit because you actually do need a lot of our stuff. That's why you buy it. Trudeau responded right away. This was only a couple hours ago. He says there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become a part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trading and security partner. Also disagree with Trudeau here. I think we wouldn't need to become a part of the United States. We can form some sort of union, almost similar to what the EU does, where every country is still its own country, but there's a European Union and there's a common currency and that kind of stuff. And I think that would actually be quite beneficial. I think Canada and the U.S. together would be amazing. And I think where's the other clip that I wanted to show? While I find it, let's watch people talk about Trudeau's resignation in Toronto and just what they had to say. I'm going to try to find that clip of Doug Ford talking about it because it was pretty good.
I think it's the best thing ever.
He should have done
That's
it
really loud. Sorry, let me
maybe
turn that down.
3-4 years earlier.
He's been in power too long. We need change.
I think he's definitely ruined the Liberal Party for a lot of Canadian people.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
Are you better off today than you were 10 years ago?
No, I am not.
Listen, I'm 40 years old. I don't own a home. I'm renting down here. I'm paying $2,400 rent a month.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in downtown Toronto. And finally, amidst plunging poll numbers and an internal palace coup, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced just hours ago that he is indeed stepping down as Liberal Party of Canada leader.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
If that sounds a little too good to be true, it kind of is, isn't it? He will remain as Prime Minister. He will be proroguing Parliament until March 24th. And, does this change the equation when it comes to the fortunes of the Liberal Party of Canada? That's what we're here today to find out, how Torontonians think about the Prime Minister finally throwing in the towel. And, does a new leader resurrect the hopes and dreams of the Liberal Party of Canada, or is this ship going down no matter what? Let's see what the folks have to say.
I was hoping for it. I wish it happened faster, but hey, as long as we can get up before the new election, as soon as we can is best for that guy. He needs to be out of here.
That's good.
Well, that's great news. That guy's a chump. You can't stand that guy. Go back to drama teaching.
So it's good. It's good for the country.
Okay, then.
If it's a democratic decision, it has to be good.
It's good news?
It's news.
Okay, just news. Okay, then.
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. So I just recently found out, but yeah, that's about it.
I knew it was coming a long time ago, and I'm sorry to see him go in many ways.
I think it's the best thing ever.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it should be a national holiday now.
I think it's good.
I have no idea what the frig he did.
Okay.
And I don't know why people are going crazy. So I don't care. This is how the government is. I don't know.
Actually, I think it's very late. He should have done it maybe 3-4 years earlier after his first term.
Gotta agree with this guy. It's too late.
What it did to this country, what it did to the economy, what it did to the immigration system. I'm an immigrant myself, but what's going on now, I do not totally support it, no.
Yes, he's been in power too long. We need change.
Okay.
Good change, not crap change.
Okay.
How's that for an answer?
Sounds good to me. What about yourself, sir?
She said it all already.
I have no comment, no really political views, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No worries. That's it. I always find that fascinating, folks.
Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about here just before we get to the Ford clip. Let me shove that up there too. Okay, so I know a bunch of people have been confused about, well, not confused, but Trudeau didn't really word it properly when he was talking in his speech. He did say that he's proroguing Parliament, but the excuse that he used to ask the Governor General to prorogue Parliament was because the last House session was totally caught up with SDTC. There was, he called it a filibuster, but we all know it was Liberals not handing the unredacted documents to the RCMP. So his excuse for proroguing Parliament was that the last House session was totally ineffective and that I guess there needs to be some break so that way, parliamentarians can think about actually getting work done. But then he also says right after that, oh, now we need a new leadership race for the Liberal Party. So we all know that his excuse for actually proroguing Parliament isn't what he said. It was because he wanted to have time for the Liberal Party to have a new leadership race. So there is a bit of confusion there where people are going, oh, well, can't we just do something about this? Can't we call an election right away? No, his excuse is technically valid in terms of, even though we all know it's a lie, he's really doing it for the Liberal Party. But that's just one thing I wanted to talk about there. The second thing was on the Trump tariffs and the thought of Canada becoming some sort of 51st state. I did say this previously, but it would be good if we were some sort of union, not... Trump's really just trying to get at the fact that those two countries becoming a powerhouse together would be really good for both countries. And I actually agree with that from an economic standpoint. If he did want it to be the 51st state, he would probably have to call up the king, the monarchy. He would have to offer trillions of dollars to buy Canada, and that would be up to the king if he wanted to sell, because Canada still has lots of crown land. It's still owned. We're still a Commonwealth country. We're still technically owned by the King of England. The King of England would have to decide whether or not he wanted to sell Canada, which is something that I don't think that would happen. That's just, it's way too far-fetched. Now, us becoming some sort of union, that could be possible, something similar to what they do in the EU, and I think personally that from an economic standpoint, that would be good for both countries. And it would be kind of under one currency. It'd be similar to what they do in the EU, where travel's really unrestricted between the countries that are all part of the European Union. You know, it's like 3 years visa instantly and all that kind of stuff. So I think that would be good for both parties. Now let's tune into what Ford had to say about that, about the Trump tariffs.
As the country saw this morning, the Prime Minister has said that he was going to step down as Prime Minister. But that doesn't mean he's no longer Prime Minister for the next month or 2 months. We need the Prime Minister to focus 100% on the U.S. tariffs. We have 14 days left before elect President Trump gets inaugurated, and we need to focus to make sure these tariffs don't move forward, and if they do move forward, we need to make sure that the federal government has a strong plan. The Prime Minister said he'd sit down with all the premiers, face-to-face meeting. I still want to hold him to that promise. He still will be Prime Minister for a month, maybe 2 months, but that has to be his number one focus. We have a great group of premiers. As chair of the Council of Federation, reaching out to the premiers to get together as early as this week to have a conversation and make sure that we are ready to support the federal government in this time of uncertainty at the federal level. But I can assure you, we have a strong group of premiers. We're going to continue moving this country forward, continue moving Ontario forward, and making sure that we have a seat at the table when the discussions of the tariffs are placed against Canada. And hopefully that won't happen, but we need all hands on deck. We need the Prime Minister to continue doing his job. Prorogation doesn't mean vacation. It means continuing moving forward as the Prime Minister as long as he holds that title. Canada's not the problem. The problem is China shipping in cheap goods into Mexico, Mexico slapping a made in Mexico sticker on and shipping those goods up through the US and Canada, costing Canadian and American jobs. That's unacceptable. And as I've always said, if we have to go it alone with the US, so be it. And if we have to do another deal with Mexico, so be it. But we have to make sure that we protect the jobs of Canadians. There's never been a time in history that is so important to make sure that we protect Canadian jobs, no matter if it's our critical minerals that we have to offer to the U.S., our electricity, oil from Alberta. We have a lot to offer. What I'm focused on right this second and for moving forward is making sure that we don't have tariffs. And God forbid President-elect Trump gets in there and puts tariffs we have to retaliate. We have to retaliate hard against our friends south of the border, which is unfortunate. And I always say we have to build a fortress Can-Am, Canadian and Americans sticking together in these tough times around the world. And they are tough times around the world right now. But there's no better ally and friend we want to partner up with than the Americans. But we do want an in-person meeting with the Prime Minister, as long as he's Prime Minister. His main focus is not on the Liberal Party, is not on anything else. It should be the next 14 days making sure that we avoid these tariffs. And if we can't avoid these tariffs, how are the federal government going to retaliate? We have a list of how the province of Ontario can retaliate, and we're ready. We're ready to make a move.
Okay, so I slightly agree with his stance there on the Can-Am, he called it, Canada-America, some sort of like union alliance. That's definitely a good idea. Like not Canada becoming a 51st state, because that just wouldn't work, but some sort of union. This was also yesterday. This was outside Parliament, where Trudeau was actually not here. He was at his cottage, which we saw him during COVID all the time. But these are people just parked outside Parliament hoping that they could get a whiff of Trudeau and give him some heckling. Well, that's really loud. Sorry, let me turn that down.
Wow, yes.
I could imagine the heckling that he would have got if he actually walked out there. Jordan Peterson also commented on Trudeau's resignation.
Well, I watched his resignation speech this morning, and I thought, you know, I've never heard Justin Trudeau say a true word in his entire life. I'm a pretty astute clinician, and I can, if I pay attention, I can tell the difference between someone who's, you know, merely wrong and trying his best, and someone who just lies with every single breath. And he is definitely a person like that. Everything he does is an act. And his resignation speech was an act. You could tell because today he started out with the words, well, everyone knows that I'm a fighter and I don't give up. And I mean, Pierce, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine myself ever saying something like that in public. Who would say that?
I know.
I'm a fighter.
Especially as you're giving up.
Really?
Especially as you're literally giving up.
Well.
It's like, I quit,
Yeah,
but I'm
well,
not a quitter.
you know.
Yes, you are. You're literally quitting in front of our eyes.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the case that you saw in that opening salvo exactly his preoccupation with himself.
Yeah.
It's like, this is all a drama about Justin Trudeau, as far as Justin Trudeau is concerned. You all know I'm a fighter. It's like, actually, Justin, at the moment, we don't give a damn if you're a fighter. Actually, we don't give a damn about you, period. This isn't about you. It's about the fact that over 9 years, you have moved Canadians from parity in terms of per capita GDP. We were equal to the Americans 9 years ago, equal. And now we're at 60%, which is also, by the way, the case for you guys in the UK. And that's 100% attributable to Justin Trudeau and his like nightmarish, woke, leftist, weak policies. And it's exactly the same cabal of self-serving narcissists that have been in power so often in the UK and that are responsible for the clamorous silence surrounding these sadistic rape gangs. And I'm so glad he's gone. He was a curse. My country is in worse shape by far than I've ever seen it in my entire life.
Okay, that's a really good point. You know, he's saying that he is I'm not a quitter while he's quitting. This was also on Fox. They were reacting to this yesterday as well.
You think about recent history, and Trudeau goes down to Mar-a-Lago. Trump takes this swipe and talks about Canada being the 51st state, and he's welcome to be the governor. And then Trudeau kind of bit back in maybe a little bit of hubristic way. Watch this.
The United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am and always will be a proud feminist.
I guess he'll be a proud feminist from the sidelines.
Yeah, exactly, from his unemployed couch. Look, I think the reality is that he sort of sailed into office on the coattails of his father's performance. And as he promised sunny ways for Canada, he wanted to combat climate change. He wanted to restore Indigenous people's rights. He wanted to do things like stand with feminists. But the reality is that the country fell apart economically. So those things are, the Indigenous people's equality is absolutely paramount. But the things like combating climate change, these sort of fluff things paled in comparison to those under his watch that were struggling to put food on the table. And when you coupled that with his regulatory hammer, that was an incredible fist for him to rule with, and it didn't make any sense. And you remember that viral moment where he interacted with a steelworker, I believe, who said, you're not really doing anything for us, Justin. And that sort of became the tenor of that entire country that said, you have not done anything for us other than stand at your pulpit with these sort of platitudes, sort of similar to a Gavin Newsom, And I think the other reality is that the global support for this movement, Poilievre's, the 20% lead of the Conservative movement over his Liberal Party is astronomical. And now you're seeing that support reflected in Elon Musk, in others, as you said earlier, with Donald Trump's party and people and community, which are seeing that, and just across the board, regardless of international lines, saying you need to be able to have a robust way to earn a livelihood and to stimulate economic growth and prosperity, or everything else falls apart.
Jeremy, and the trucker protests early 2022 that Martha mentioned, that was huge. They were protesting public health mandates during COVID. And they had this Emergencies Act in Canada, passed in 1988, never before used. But oh wait, Justin Trudeau uses it. Then there's this Bloomberg headline that banks were collecting information on the truckers. It was positively Orwellian, the way the Freedom Convoy was treated.
That's exactly right. We've even heard some reports of their bank accounts being frozen for some of the truckers. Yeah. It was absolutely ridiculous. And honestly, this shows a cautionary tale for leaders in power. If you start to get disconnected from the people that you have been elected to represent, you won't stay in office for long. And honestly, it was funny. I have a little kind of anecdotally, I saw this firsthand with Justin Trudeau. But when I was in Ukraine training the Ukrainian armed forces, we had Canadian service members who were there with us, and Justin Trudeau came to visit. So he comes to a military base, where his service members are deployed, showing up. He's got, no tie on. He's got this blazer, his aviators on, khaki, just like hanging out. He takes one picture with them and says that they can't come and approach him afterwards. They were not even allowed to, I don't even know if they were able to shake his hand, some of the kind of rank and file soldiers. And I just thought, that's something you would never see from President Trump, for example. And President Trump, he shakes every member's hand, and he's connected to people. And that's what Justin Trudeau is missing. And that's ultimately why you see him resigning today.
Fascinating. Yeah, the Secret Service, Harris, has to beg Trump not to go out into the crowd. Exactly. So kind of opposite.
Yeah, I remember the all-women town hall. He drove in. It was like a mosh pit. Gosh, that sounds like an aristocracy. I had no idea he had that. What you said, though, Martha, resonated with me so much because he's like Biden. He's out of touch. This isn't like an age thing. This is a political thing. Yeah. Biden could have been 50. It wouldn't have mattered. Could have been 30, 38. Wouldn't have mattered. He was out of touch. And a guest last hour, Cassie Smedley, who was the deputy communications team director for the RNC, told me something really interesting. This has been going on for 20 years. Well, just think 12 of the last 16 Democrats have been in the White House. So this is kind of instilled. This wasn't just a fumble on the football field one weekend and then everybody voted on November 5th. This was baked into their bloodstream as Democrats. I don't know that you shake that right away. And so even when they replaced Justin Trudeau to the north in the Liberal Party, there was one woman, I guess he wasn't quite far left enough, Chrystia Freeland, who was his deputy prime minister. She quit. The person who replaced her, Dominic LeBlanc, he wasn't happy either. He took over for her. They're a couple of the front runners in this for the Liberal Party. I don't know if it's your politics that are broken. If you're out of touch with people, as you said, Martha, who cares who they replace him with? It's got to be somebody else. And again, I keep saying those hundreds of miles of border up there that have to be secure. This is a national security issue. We need somebody up north we can actually talk to and have action done with. It's not going to be him. I doubt it's going to be anybody in his party.
Yeah. And maybe the next Prime Minister of Canada won't take swipes at the entire American population for not having a woman in charge.
Yep. Good points there. Good points. So the Americans are even starting to realize what the hell's going on. There was the other clip. Let's get back to the Mark Miller clip here because this was pretty interesting. Him commenting on stuff. some of the points of the Liberal MPs now are starting to get a little bit more, they start off very, pro Trudeau, and then they start to go down, and you'll see.
Last couple months, probably the most political discussions I've ever had with him in my political career and his political career. And we constantly talked about the impact of his decision, yay or nay, on Canadians in Canada. Not about his legacy or his political future and fortune, but on what this meant for Canada. His decision to stay on today reflects that decision. We have some serious concerns with the potential impact of tariffs from the U.S., spiking in unemployment in Canada. And the country needs some stability that he can provide without having, and let's be honest about this, to fight battles on two fronts, including from his own party. So that decision congealed over the last couple of days, and ultimately he took the one that was right for the nation, for Canadians who he loves, and that was to say that he wasn't going to run the next election.
And when you say it congealed, I wonder what you can impart, and I wouldn't ask you to disclose the private conversations that you've had, but when I listened to his comments today, it was more of a, in my view, what I heard, it can't go on with the internal politics as they are. I cannot sustain the position I have. I don't see a path forward. I know that's what people around him at least were telling me, with the fact that caucus, he had basically lost the support of the majority of caucus. Is it that ultimately prompted him to make the decision that he did? And is there any sort of I did X, Y, and Z wrong that led me to this place?
Look, I don't think you can pin it down to one factor. I would say, given his state of mind a couple of years ago, he was probably closer at times to stepping back than he had been over the last 6 months. Probably not the time and place to discuss that particular time in history, but it's not that he hasn't thought about this in the past. I'll take my advice that I've given to the Prime Minister over the last few weeks to the grave. But I can say this without any hesitation, that the concerns have not been about his political future, but about what is best for Canadians and what's best for Canada, to a fault. And you'll probably hear that from the same people, from other people that have discussed his future. The party dynamics are not without concern. They don't disappear overnight with the disappearance, or at least the fact that the Prime Minister will not be taking us into the next election. Those remain, and there's been some damage done to the party, whoever you ascribe fault to. And that's something that we have to, frankly, resolve over the next weeks as we unify around a leadership process that is yet to be decided. But it's one that we need to do if we're going to put our best foot forward for Canadians and stop focusing on internal dynamics of the party. I think we can do this, and we need to continue to focus on what I believe is the biggest threat to Canada, and it's becoming quite obvious given his reaction today. And Pierre Poilievre is a leader who wants to destroy everything that we have left for Canadians over the last 9 years, whether you agree with them or not. And given his behavior today, Pierre Poilievre has been entirely classless, and I think that's what we're going to get with a leader like Pierre Poilievre. We need someone that can beat him.
The Conservatives, though, argue that the Prime Minister taking as long as he did, or making the decision in the fashion he did, actually isn't in the interest of Canadians. It's not just the Conservatives, in fact. To be fair, today we heard from the leader of the Bloc, the leader of the NDP, all of whom say, that they plan at the earliest opportunity to bring your government down. What kind of stability has the decision-making of Justin Trudeau actually provided at this crucial time, as you outlined, facing the threat of economic recession? What actually has served the interests of Canadians in that capacity?
Well, look, these people, and you know it, you've seen it, they will pump, they will bluster and then stand up in the House of Commons and support this. They did that as lately as 3 weeks ago.
The NDP, you mean?
That's proof that will need to be tested in late March. We owe it to Canadians to reach out. We're in a minority. We have been so for the longest period of our history. We owe it to Canadians to reach out to those parties to see if they would like to work with us and with the new leader. Let's not fault Justin Trudeau for doing what he has done best, which is to fight. His instincts of a fighter has served him well. No one is going to reproach his courage for sticking around a couple rounds and fighting for Canadians. That's the situation that we're in, and I profoundly respect that decision. Deciding to step down is one that you shouldn't necessarily take overnight based on the public behavior of 2 or 3, 4 or 5, 20 MPs. It does require reflection. Recall about 4 or 5 weeks ago, or at least early in the summer, a number of MPs were annoyed with the Prime Minister for only taking 2 days to reflect. Some of those same voices were saying it took too long, 3 weeks. So which is it? This happened over a period of time that included his birthday, Christmas, holidays with his family. And that's usually an opportunity to step back and breathe. And he had to figure out his political future. So there's a very personal aspect to this, Vashti, and I would really appreciate finishing. This is an extremely important decision in the future of the nation. And every single decision point that the Prime Minister has taken has not been about himself, but about the future of the country and his love for Canadians. And I think today was the right day to do it for our nation.
Can you understand how Canadians might think differently? Because you're referencing a period of just 3 weeks. That's since his deputy prime minister said she and the prime minister were at odds over the future direction of the country. Since last year, the positioning of your party in public opinion polling has been borne out through 2 very significant losses in by-elections in 2 very safe seats for your party. Like, that public opinion polling has been persistent for a very long time. Those calls that you mentioned from MPs came in October. They came in the summer. It's not like it just arose out of thin air over the last 3 weeks. Instead, what we have now is the Prime Minister announcing this decision at a time of great tumult for the country, as you point out. Is it truly in the best interest of Canadians that he waited this long?
Well, I think the proof is what we were able to do in the House of Commons. I'll give it to you that the last 3 months have been entirely unproductive based on essentially filibustering by the Conservative Party, but we were able to put through dental care with the help of the NDP and votes in the House for purposes of the Governor General considering actions like today for purposes of our democracy actually count. And every time we have been able to garner support of the very least the New Democratic Party. Being governed by polls has its limitations. It's no surprise, and we can't be blind to the fact that we have not been popular. And that's something I think we need to take stock of, and particularly now in the period of the last 4 weeks that we've seen a lot of internal fighting. The question is our ability and whether we deserve to govern with a new leader. And I think that's something that we need to look at internally as a party as we reflect upon who will lead the party
don't deserve
into
to
the
do
next
anything
election. And that
besides
will
go
be
to jail.
a test of the party's unity and our deservingness in front of Canadians.
Do you anticipate that your government will decide or attempt to prorogue Parliament beyond March 24th? And I ask because I was thinking today, as I watched comments around prorogation, of 2008, I was working in Saskatoon at the time, of the uproar from Liberals and other members of the opposition at the time over Stephen Harper's decision to prorogue. In the 2015 campaign platform for your party, Stephen Harper has used prorogation to avoid difficult political circumstances. We will not. I think a lot of Canadians think that's exactly what your party is doing right now. Yeah. Will you commit to not extending that prorogation beyond March 24th?
I think it's untenable, actually, without some form of confidence vote on the last week of March in order for the government simply to function. So I think that is moot for all intents and purposes. Prorogation has to be used judiciously. I think in this case, for the sake of the stability of the country, no one wants to be in an election with the threat of job-killing tariffs coming in from President Trump. We need someone, and I believe that's why the Prime Minister decided to stay on for this period until a leader is chosen, to make sure that the country has that stability in being able to face potential tariffs and the response, the measured response that we need to have with our most important trading partner and ally.
Just one final quick question for you on that note, because we've heard from various premiers today who are worried that, in fact, his position, and for lack of a better term, as a lame duck, will do the opposite. That there is no clear mandate for your party right now because there has not been an election, and as a result, the overall positioning of Canada vis-a-vis these negotiations has thereby been weakened. We've heard that in some form or another from Danielle Smith, from Doug Ford as well. The premiers are worried. Don't they have reason to be?
Well, as I've said, we need to make sure that this is Team Canada and not Team Province X. That is critically important. We need to be on the same page. A measured response means taking some very, very difficult actions that will be difficult for Canada, that will be difficult for the U.S. If the U.S. brings the pain, we're going to have to respond appropriately, and that's something that we've been working on. The first order of business that the Prime Minister attended to after today's announcement, Vashi, was to attend our Canada-U.S. meeting and talk about the things that we need to do were the U.S. to impose measures in and around the January 20th or thereafter. The Prime Minister's concerned for the ongoing government and how it acts and reacts, especially in the face of a leadership race where potentially some ministers that are important have to step back, is of primary concern for the Canadians, for the Prime Minister. And that's part of the logic in him staying on, where he didn't want to fight battle on two fronts, including in his own caucus. So his mind is squarely focused on this, and I think Canadians can expect the response that the Prime Minister has been able to deliver in the past, particularly during COVID or during the negotiations of NAFTA with that same President Trump.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Minister Miller, I appreciate your time.
Okay, so just while we were watching that, it looks like Jagmeet Singh also responded to the Trump comments today. He says, "Cut the crap, Donald. No Canadian wants to join you. We are proud Canadians, proud of the way we take care of each other and defend our nation. Your attacks will hurt jobs on both sides of the border. You come for Canadians' jobs. Americans will pay a price." The plebs comment says, "You're not even Canadian." That's golden. That's golden. And we saw Justin Trudeau also respond to this. We read this earlier, saying there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become a part of the United States. I mean, looks like both of these guys are finally starting to get some backbone on how Trump is saying this, but I don't know where this couldn't have come weeks ago. Now they're just all of a sudden deciding to say stuff like that. I guess they didn't like what Trump said today, so it's kind of funny. Where's the other clip I had? We can watch the rest of this while we're waiting.
Construction
grab the
worker
other clip.
said he had no political views. You know, there's a saying, those who do not care about politics will be ruled over by those who do. He's going to remain on as Prime Minister. He's going to step down as party leader. A lot of people would prefer it if an election were called as soon as possible. How do you feel?
Well, it's everything has to go through a process, and I think we should all respect it. The time is now. I don't want any more rhetoric to get in there. I think it's clear as day where we're at right now, and any more time is just gonna feed more stuff into people's head. I think we're ready right now. Let's get it done.
We should honestly just have an election at this point. It's been held off for so long. We should just have an election, in all honesty. I don't understand why we keep, what is it? Something like 80% of Canadians don't even want him anymore. I feel like that's enough to have an election already.
I think we should have an election right away.
Yes.
Right away.
We should call it right away.
Okay, then.
That'd be great.
We sat silent for a long time thinking something was going to change, and I think now's the time that we're going to speak up. If there was an election, I know for a fact the middle class will show exactly where we're at and what we're feeling.
Does the Liberal Party of Canada stand a chance of winning the next election?
Zero. I don't think they're going to win.
Yeah. Too much damage to the brand?
Too much. Yeah,
Okay.
They're done.
Yeah, I don't think the Liberals will be in power much longer.
Okay, then.
It's probably a good thing.
I totally don't think it matters who's in charge. Their platform is a woke agenda it's just dead. It's clearly dead. It's dead in the U.S. and it's dead here now.
I don't have much faith in Justin Trudeau.
Okay.
Or the Liberals. So I think defeat is where it's going.
Might as well take a chance, right? It's pretty clear that the people don't want Trudeau. So might as well the Liberal Party takes a chance on someone who's fit for the role.
I can't comment on that. Let's see who's the new face. Whom do they select, or how's the process going on?
I'd like for them not to lose the election, so whichever way.
Oh, you'd like the Liberals to remain in power?
Well, I'd like the NDP to be in power, but that's not going to happen.
What are your thoughts towards the actions of the NDP leader, sir?
I wish I was a little bit more informed on that. I was aware that he was kind of holding things off. I've heard it's more just waiting for his retirement. That's all I can really say. That's pretty much what I've heard.
We would have had an election maybe 2 years ago if Jagmeet Singh wasn't constantly propping up the Trudeau Liberals. What do you say to that, ma'am?
Well, I think he propped them up for good reason. He got a lot from them. As a trade-off, and he was able to do things that he couldn't do otherwise.
I think the nickname he has got perfectly suits him, Sellout Singh. Because on the media, in front of the public, he appears to be different. But on the parliament, he's different.
I think that the reason that it went on so long is because nobody's really paying attention.
In the media, in the social media, or wherever he goes, he opposes Trudeau, but in the back, he always supports him. Why is so?
When he stepped down, he was talking about his legacy, that he fought for the middle class, he fought against climate change, he showed leadership during the pandemic. Are you buying any of that?
No, there was no leadership. The pandemic was a joke.
Yes.
They were handing out money to people like left, right, and center with no cause. It was ridiculous. It was free for all.
That'd be somebody's legacy, but not his.
Everything is so expensive, not only just in the province, but right across Canada.
Listen, I'm 40 years old. I don't own a home. I'm renting down here. I'm paying $2,400 rent a month. I'm paycheck to paycheck. I'm a single dad trying to do the best I can, and it's failed. We're failed.
Are you better off today than you were 10 years ago?
No, I am not.
Okay.
I am not.
I don't think anybody
I was
is.
better off 10 years ago. I was able to live. I'm on my own now, and I still have a job, and I'm 67 years old, still working, so I'm able to feed myself right now. But what if?
I voted for Justin Trudeau at the start when everything, when there was a lot of promise there, and it's just been constant let down since, and it's been the worst that it's been, and there was a lot of hope at the start, and now we're here where we're at.
His greatest achievements are filling Jagmeet Singh's pocket.
I've fought for this country, for you, to strengthen and
For
grow
yourself.
the middle class.
And if I were to guess, it strikes me that you are a member of the middle class. You don't feel, I suppose, that Justin Trudeau has fought for you for the last decade, do you?
No, not at all. I truly don't. I feel totally ignored, and I think a lot of people feel that way.
Hi there, sir. We're just asking people today what they think of Justin Trudeau stepping down. He's just whistling Dixie.
I'm okay.
You're okay? Is he okay with the announcement, or is he just, okay? No? A little too hot to handle that question.
Not today, thanks.
Not today?
Good luck, though.
Okay, thank you. Don't know what that means, but I guess it isn't today. It's March 24th. Well, a lot of people have a lot of different reasons not to come on camera, and I just spoke to a lady off camera. I'm not going to say her name, but she's originally from Eastern Europe. She works for a government agency, and she mentioned if she's seen being interviewed, she will lose her job, which she can ill afford to lose.
That's crazy. People can't comment on Trudeau's resignation because they could lose their job. That's insane.
Forced to take the jab, and she was forced to sign a contract saying she will not speak to the media. Can you imagine that? There is some more of Justin Trudeau's legacy. I can only imagine how she feels about the news today.
Not talking to you.
Not talking to me. Well, what did I do? Oh, he's an employee of MLSC. He's got the secret key to get into the Scotiabank Arena. I wonder if Emily Hillstrom, John Tory's former mistress, maybe current mistress, put out the bad words of Rebel News. Unbelievable. Couldn't help notice your button that says Stop Ford. Is that the automobile company or the Premier of Ontario?
Both.
Wow. I don't know. I kind of like my Ford Adrenaline. Well, there you have it, folks. And by the way, if any of you are thinking we're doing selective editing, I swear to you, after spending more than 2 hours on the ground here in downtown Toronto, we could not find a single supporter of Justin Trudeau nor the Liberal Party of Canada. What does that tell you when it comes to a Liberal stronghold such as downtown Toronto? We found one NDP supporter. As for everybody else on camera, the ongoing theme was less of au revoir or bon voyage and more of good riddance, Justin. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies.
That's pretty funny. Can't find I spent 2 hours down here. Can't find a single person who's okay with the Liberal Party still. So let's watch a couple more clips. I don't think we have to watch all of this. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you guys was I just checked betting websites. So betting websites are now starting to post the odds for the next the 45th Canadian federal election. So who's going to get sworn in? So like if you bet 100 quid or 100 pounds, which would be about $200 Canadian, you get 2 back if you bet on Conservatives to win. In other words, if you're not familiar with betting, you get practically nothing for betting on the Conservative Party. If you bet on the Liberal Party to win, your return is, let's just say 50. The maximum stake is 25. Okay. You get, if you bet 25, you get 275 back. So that's just showing you that the betting websites have already placed odds at Conservatives winning, and you basically win nothing for betting on Conservatives because they're so heavily favored. If you bet on Liberals and they just so happen to win, you are getting a massive payoff. So that's usually how betting websites work, which is just funny to see that. I've looked at multiple different betting websites as well. They all say the same thing.
A fight, particularly when a fight is as important as this one is.
But this time, Justin Trudeau's fight is over. After almost 10 years of leading the country, 12 as leader of the Liberal Party, the Prime Minister announced yesterday he's stepping down.
It has become obvious to me with the internal battles that I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
Parliament has been prorogued until the 24th of March, buying the...
Oh, okay, so this isn't the one that I was hoping to look up. I was trying to find this other clip. Give me a second. We'll watch the Trump clip again, just because I know some people might not have seen this. This was earlier today, just a couple hours ago.
If we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada the 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstances will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't.
Points, you had suggested.
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir, real fast, you said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like. And it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you, if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. We help them. As an example, we're buying icebreakers, and Canada wants to join us in the buying of icebreakers. I said, we don't really want to have a partner in the buying of icebreakers. We don't need a partner. But no right. Nope, no right. Here's what we have. We have a right not to help them with their financial difficulties because we owe $36 trillion too. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast, but we're going to be able to do it because of energy and other things. But no right. No right. But why are we supporting a country, $200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their...
That is 100% true. If they cut off or the tariffs happen or whatever, and it really ruins our trade with the United States, our GDP per capita is going to completely tank, and we can't handle that. It's just... Even Trudeau says even Trump has said that Trudeau said that to him, that Canada would essentially dissolve.
20% of our car market. They send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything. And we don't need any of it. So I said to him, well, why are we doing it? He said, I don't really know. He was unable to answer the question, but I can answer it. We're doing it because of habit, and we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors. But we can't do it forever, and it's a tremendous amount of money. And why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either.
And I agree with what he's saying, is that essentially the European Union just takes all of our or we take all of their stuff and they don't take any of ours. Like in Europe, there's no real American-made cars, all that kind of stuff. At least in Canada, we still buy American-made products. But anyway.
In Union, we have a trade deficit of $350 billion. They don't take our cars. They don't take our farm product. They don't take anything. And so we're not going to have it with them either. Brian, go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to comment on this again, because a couple people have been saying this in chat, and I just want to, if you guys listened to Trudeau's speech, and we all listened to it the other day, he says very specifically that when he called the Governor General for proroguing, he called and told the Governor General that the last parliamentary session of last year was just an entire filibuster, and in my opinion, it was because the Liberals weren't sending the unredacted documents to the RCMP. But he said basically we didn't get anything done, so we need to prorogue the start of this parliamentary session, and that was the excuse. He didn't use the excuse to the Governor General that he needed time for a new leadership race for the Liberal Party, but we all know that's why that was the reason. The reason was because he wanted to give the Liberals time for a leadership race. So a lot of people are, we know that that's the reason, but the reason that he used to the Governor General was because of the last parliamentary session being basically, a big filibuster. But anyway, so here's a couple things I also want to show too, because I know some people are starting to catch the wave of Pierre Poilievre. I have some clips that are pretty old, and these are a couple things that I like about Pierre Poilievre just being a straight shooter when he's answering questions. Let me just make sure this isn't too loud.
My question, sir, is should you form the next federal government, will you make female safe spaces safe again by introducing legislation that bans so-called transgender women from participating in female sports and getting access into female shelters and female prisons?
Female spaces should be exclusively for females, not for biological males. You asked if I introduced legislation on that. A lot of the spaces you described are provincially and municipally controlled. So it is unclear what federal legislation what reach federal legislation would have to change them. But obviously, female sports, female change rooms, female bathrooms should be for females, not for biological males.
So that's one clip. Here's another one.
We live in a time where the expression climate criminal is used to make the folks driving their big trucks and cars behind you feel guilty and feel responsible for destroying the planet. What do you have to say to average Canadians who have to drive their cars, they have to drive their trucks, or, God forbid, work in the extractive industries such as fossil fuel and mining?
Well, I think people who use that kind of incendiary language are just trying to intimidate taxpayers into taking more of their money. We see this kind of really radical, extreme, and wacko language from the Trudeau Liberals, where they attack people for driving automobiles. They say they want to ban roads. Catherine McKenna, I think, said that anyone who's against her carbon tax is an arsonist.
We live in a time where the...
Here, let me pull up another clip. Savage, what do you mean by how does that actually impact what he said? What do you mean by that? I was just more commenting on that. Some people were saying that, there's a committee and things like that. People are going to try and sue, or people are going to try and call up whoever to get Parliament back to session or to get an election right away. We have no power to do that. It's that's what I was trying to say, is that Trudeau's excuse for proroguing Parliament is technically in line with legislation and parliamentary procedure. Is it ethical or moral? No. Is he lying about the reason why he's proroguing Parliament? Yes. But in terms of like actual parliamentary procedure, he's done his work on the back end for proroguing Parliament. But I don't agree with it, obviously. I'm not endorsing Trudeau. I'm just saying. And it's funny because there's even clips of him before, like, when he was running in 2015, getting mad about Stephen Harper proroguing Parliament, and he's like, "Oh, we would never do that." And of course, now he's gone and done that. So here's another.
And finally, I point out the irony that someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times, he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he? What he should actually do is look into his own heart and ask himself why he was such a hateful racist. Despite his enormous personal privileges of a multi-million-dollar trust fund, being the son of a prime minister, growing up in mansions, traveling the world, why he had so much hate in his heart that he was such an awful racist. And what he should do is actually explain where that ugliness came from, and maybe in that way, rather than through coercion, he could help us all in the fight against real hate. Thank you.
So I just love the way Pierre talks to reporters. Anytime somebody asks him a question, he doesn't beat around the bush. He just gets right to exactly answering the question and gives a very straightforward response. Here's another one. Sorry, let me find this one.
Trudeau famously said that the economy is not about numbers, it's about people. Well, I hate to break it to you, Justin, but numbers affect people. In fact, as Pythagoras said, numbers rule the universe. And numbers are the things that you see on that receipt at the grocery store. Numbers are the things on the price billboard at the gas station. Numbers are those little digits on the screen when you're looking at your monthly mortgage payment. If you're brave enough to bring it up on your screen, those are all numbers, Justin. And those numbers impact how much food are in the bellies of people, or whether they have roofs over their heads, or whether they have to work 70 hours a week just to avoid eviction. Numbers rule the universe, and unfortunately the numbers are cruel for Canadians after 8 years. Trudeau famously said...
Okay. So we'll watch a couple more clips, and then we're going to call it. Here's one interesting. This might be slightly off topic, but I think it's still on with the way things are going. Mark Zuckerberg has said today that he's going to be changing Facebook and Instagram. I know most of us probably really only use the Facebook part, but he's changing it to a way where kind of Twitter has kind of become, where there's more freedom of speech and all that. I'll just let you guys listen to this for yourself, because this is the way the world's going now. And I'm liking it.
Hey, everyone.
Whoa, this is really loud. Sorry for your ears there.
I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, That's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US.
Just like Trudeau has gotten community notes. Let me pull that up real quick. If you guys are unfamiliar with X or you're unfamiliar with Twitter, let me find one of Justin Trudeau's tweets that has community notes on it. Here, we'll keep listening to this, though.
After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower-severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
Yeah, so basically what I got from this was that social media platforms are starting to not lean so much to the left. They don't really care about the advertising revenue that has. Also, I'm noticing his nose is really crooked. Has anybody noticed that? It's like, but what I got from that is platforms like X are starting to take over. X has become number one in the news category in the App Store for most countries that allow it. And Zuckerberg's seeing that, and he's going, listen, I think that's the way things are changing now. There was a whole big movement for this LGBTQ movement. There was this whole left-wing narrative that was getting pushed and all this kind of stuff. And now things are kind of starting to swing back to the right a little bit more. I still think there's a lot of people, because I've talked about this with a lot of my friends that are in Canada still, and they are 100% not voting for Trudeau. They're 100% not voting for Jagmeet Singh. They're definitely voting Conservative. But I hear this common phrase a lot is, I just don't know if I trust Pierre Poilievre, or he seems sneaky, or he seems sly, or whatever the cost is, or whatever, the word is that they use for it. And I think people have just lost so much trust in politics over the last 10 years that they can't even trust a good politician when they see one. So, I mean, I've watched Pierre Poilievre for many years now. I've seen him anytime he's talked to reporters. I've even watched clips when he wasn't the Conservative leader and when he was in committees and things like that. I've always seen him as a very straight shooter. He answers questions very directly. He doesn't beat around the bush. He doesn't use too much political slang or anything like that. He just gets right to the answer. And I find it kind of almost ironic that people don't see that, or they don't take that in, and they just really have a distrust for politics in general. And I do partially blame Trudeau and the Liberals for the last 9-10 years of, just really causing distrust in the political system, or just even politics in general, where people are just they don't trust any politician. There's always that phrase that goes back, a politician is like a car salesman, and they're just out to get you. I don't see Pierre Poilievre as that, in my personal opinion. There might be some things that people are gonna not be so happy with. We already know what his agenda is, and I have a feeling already people are gonna get upset with him canceling dental care. They're gonna get, which again, I would rather him cancel dental care and people be able to afford to go to the dentist because they keep more of their paychecks. That's just the way Conservatives are supposed to be. I also think that people are a little bit confused with how Conservatives have been in the past, and that maybe even if they look at other countries, that Conservatives particularly have a hard hat or hard nail, and they're very super like right wing and things like that. Delusioned is the word you're looking for. Yes, people are, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that people also misrepresent what Conservatives stand for. It's a very basic principle: is keep a balanced budget, less government, less involvement in getting, with permits, bureaucracy. Just let people go ahead and build an entrepreneur, and let the free market do what the free market wants. Now, there is a bit of a trade-off about that, where, in a free market, there is problems. Like, a free market is the best system we have, but it also does cause monopolies. There can be, just like Rogers and Bell are pretty much the only two that you go to. And if you go to anything else like Fido or whatever, those are pretty much owned by either Rogers or Bell. So it does cause monopolies, but the free market you should just let the free market do what the free market does. And that's the best way to run your government, is to not get involved in private business. And ethical behavior, yes. Just reading a couple comments here. Can we call the alphabet princess? I think you're right about the distrust, but I see that once PP is elected, PM, the trust will start to come back. Sorry. It will be tough, but he can do it. Yes. We have to be prepared for what has to be done to correct just a little bit of mess. Yes, that's pretty much it, is people have to be prepared for what's about to come. And if you've been watching Pierre Poilievre, and if you understand what his agenda is, then you're going to be very familiar with what tools he's going to use to balance the budget and things like that. Let the free market run, and less government, the better. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. So that's basically where I was going to end off here. I don't really have any other clips that we were going to watch. I just wanted to cover, just a couple things that maybe we missed out on yesterday or people didn't see today. And obviously my channel and a few other channels I've noticed are getting overshadowed by just the basic mainstream media and news because they're covering everything in regards to Trudeau's resignation. I don't think you can turn on a radio station or a news station and not hear about Trudeau's resignation. So we've had a lot less people in the chat. I've had a lot less views on the channel, and that's just kind of it is what it is. I was really hoping for Parliament to be having committee today. I was really looking forward to covering public accounts live, but obviously because of now Parliament being prorogued, there's no committees, there's no anything that's going to happen. So that's just a little upsetting. I am working on other channels though for kind of different content, and that's just how I'm going to deal with, going forward. Definitely will be covering as much as I can going forward too on this channel, but I feel like it is going to slow down. I did mention this yesterday that Trudeau's probably going to go in hiding. He's not going to want to talk to reporters as much as he can. He's going to try to keep away from all of the mainstream spotlight and everything like that, and he's just going to let the Liberal race go ahead with its race. So we know what's going to happen there. We know it's either going to be Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney or maybe even Melanie Joly or Dominic LeBlanc. That's probably going to be the next leader of the Liberal Party. It's not going to make a difference on how they go about their policy making and how they go about running the Liberal Party. All of those guys and girls have all been Trudeau's puppets during this whole entire facade that we've had for the last 9 years, and it's not going to make a difference on how they go forward. They're going to keep up with, the Liberal policies. So we will stop paying the 20 mil the day he axes the tax. Yes, correct. Lord knows it's everywhere. I've just been sticking to the channels I trust. Appreciate that. Appreciate you guys' viewership. Cover the same news the mainstream media does. Just give a more objective perspective. Just a suggestion. Yeah, I've been trying to do that, but I think at the end of the day, it's just things are going to slow down a lot for politics over the next couple months. It's really just going to be, we're waiting for a new Liberal leadership race to finish, and then it's just going to be an election, and we know how that's going to go. We know it's a sweeping majority for Conservatives. What will be interesting is to see if we get one in April. Are we going to go to the polls in April? Because if we get a non-confidence motion at the end of March, it takes something like 15 to 30 days for all the polling stations to get set up, all the human resources to be allocated and all that stuff, and then we should be going to the polls sometime late April. But I would prefer us going to the polls in February. If we didn't prorogue Parliament, we would have had a non-confidence motion at the end of January. We would have been to the polls in February, but I don't think we'll be going to polls until April. Some people think, someone just said in chat, Sandra just said in chat, he'll drag it out till October. I don't think that's going to happen personally. And I also said back in December that I think it's likely that Trudeau would have to step down just because of the Atlantic Caucus and the Quebec Caucus all both saying that, no, you need to go. We're not going to support you anymore. And those are kind of his two stronger provinces, or were anyway. They're not strongholds anymore. But yeah, so just I knew that something was going to have to happen, and I didn't think that he would do it in early January. I thought that he would probably do it before we got a non-confidence motion, like late January. But I knew at some point this year he was going to probably step down. Do your part to wake people up. Fed system bricks all needs to be covered. Yeah, I could cover stuff like that. According to NP, there may be a court challenge against prorogation. I mentioned that before. There's no tools that we have in our toolbox for a court challenge to challenge prorogation. There's absolutely nothing that anybody can do towards that. His excuse for proroguing Parliament is technically in line with the excuse that he used anyway, which we know is a lie. He was using that the last House session was all blah, 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 blah. It was a filibuster, which was Liberals filibustering the SDTC documents, not giving them unredacted to the RCMP, but that's just, it is what it is. He used that excuse. He didn't use the Liberal leadership race excuse when he called the Governor General. But we all know that that's a lie. We know that he's proroguing Parliament just so that it gives the Liberals almost 3 months to have a leadership race. So there's no tools in our toolbox that we can do anything about this. It is unfortunate, but a couple of people saying thanks for the stream. I appreciate you, Savage. Appreciate you guys popping in. Blaze, Mr. T, Nick, Data, My Two Cents, Sunshine, Moist Noodle, all you guys that are popping in. Oh, Savage, thank you so much for the gifted memberships. That's the first of the year. Thank you so much. Let me type that in chat as well. But yeah, I think we're gonna wind down here. We're gonna call it here. And that was just what I wanted to cover for today. You're right, though. I think someone did mention that there's a few other things that I could cover. I'll try and get into that tomorrow, maybe. I've also been really busy with personal stuff, so yeah, we're not obligated to wait till these politicians sort out their stuff. I know. Again, thank you so much, Savage, for the gifted memberships. And yeah. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I hope you guys have a good rest of your evening. I hope everybody, I don't know. I'm also kind of curious what you guys feel about Trudeau resigning. Like, are you happy about it? I have some mixed feelings personally. I think that maybe he should have stayed on, and I would have liked to see him lose in an election and a sweeping Conservative majority. I think he's kind of copping out, but I do like the fact that he resigned because I wanted that. But hey, I wonder how you guys feel about it. So let me know in the chat. Maybe you guys can chat while I'm gone here, but I'm going to call it. And thank you so much, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening, and